Well, speaking of how Hollywood works, I mean, you've kind of seen all these different iterations of it. Like from when Sex and the City pops to now, like what are the biggest, most dramatic changes in your opinion?
I can't even begin. I mean, the streaming services are obviously, I think, the biggest change. And the fact that it has allowed so many people to be able to make films and television shows. And I didn't really see that coming. I didn't realize that they would completely shift how we did things, and kind of the rules changed, and I think we're trying to change a lot of the big systems in general in our country that didn't allow people of all colors and races and ethnicities and religions and everything you want to say to tell their stories. And I think that's the most exciting part. The bad side for us, who've been in the business a long time, is that you don't make as much money.
And why is that?
Because there's so much, right? So like it used to be, and I mean, you know, it's interesting. It's like some things have really changed and some things haven't.
So like what hasn't changed?
What hasn't changed is if you're a woman and you're in the business and you're over 40, you're in a group that includes people who are over 40 all the way up to 80-year-olds.
Right.
You're in one group, which is so
And it should not be like that.
weird.
Like,
I know.
Because it's not like that for men, right?
No,
not
it's
at all.
not like that for men.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed at all either, right? So there's certain things where you're like, why hasn't that changed? But that's why you have to make your own things.
Exactly. So
Yes.
when did you realize you had to make your own stuff in order to really cut through?
I think it was when we were on Sex and the City, we were involved in everything,
Right.
which was wonderful.
That was unique at the time, I'm
It
sure,
was,
right?
yes. And it wasn't in our contract that we had to be, like, we didn't fight for it. It was just the way that our culture, our creative culture was on the show, is that we were included. We were included in casting our guys. We were included in what we did in terms of, you know, the sexuality and the nudity. Our storylines were pitched to us.
That's
like
huge.
we were,
Yeah.
and that was Michael Patrick King and HBO giving us a lot of respect, which we loved. And then we get out into the real world and we're like, at least I felt this way, because I wasn't producing right away. I was just like, I'm, you know, focused on trying to adopt my daughter, and I'm not really wanting another job. But then I realized, I'm not included in the storytelling. I'm not included in like my house choice, and I'm not included in a lot of things that really matter and really affect your characterization, but also your experience, and also the story that you're telling. Like if you know, it's odd to be not included. So that was when I realized, no, I have to step it up.
Do you think that was one of the harder things after Sex and the City because it was just so different from what you'd experienced?
It was one of the harder things. I mean, I think for us, you know, before the show started, I remember reading the script and thinking, this is a show that I would watch.
Right, and that's
like,
a big thing. That's an
for
important
women,
thing.
yes, running around New York City, you know, being paid to work in New York City, like back then,
Right,
that
yeah.
was like unbelievable.
Absolutely.
I was like, I have got to be on
Let's
this
do
show.
it, yeah.
I don't care if nobody watches this show. I just want to be on it. And it was a small show in the beginning, you know, and no one knew what we were. And we shot the whole first season before anyone saw us, and we were very worried. I remember Sarah and I having this whole long talk about like, what if the feminists get very mad at us?
Oh, you thought they would get mad?
We did.
Really?
Because we talked about sex and stuff, and we just didn't know how people were gonna respond or whatever.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's like the full gamut of the human experience when you
Of
think
course,
about it.
I
But
mean,
at
of
the same
course.
time, yeah, you could think about pissing off people along the way. I get
Yeah,
that.
we just didn't know, and we didn't want the feminists to be
Sure.
mad at us. Of course, that would have been like really painful.
Sure.
So we were like, oh gosh, what are we gonna do? We just never foresaw that it was gonna be this huge thing. So I think for me, the best part of the whole thing was this togetherness that we felt. Our writers were with us all the time. They weren't off in some writer's room. They were there, present. They were, as I said, including us in the storyline and everything. And we went through this crazy experience together. From it being like a tiny little pilot, you know, with like no craft services, to us, you know, having our own security guards and, you know, jetting around the world to do the press and all the different whatevers and the private plane and like crazy things I never thought would happen. And we did it as a group, which was great. And then you're out on your own and you're like, gosh, I'm so lonely.
Yeah. Well, especially because it was such a group unit there.
Yeah.
It wasn't just you.
And it was women. You were
Yeah.
with women. And to me, that was great because it's very rare. You're usually with a bunch of guys on a set. And I do think that's changing somewhat.
Sure.
And that's part of the reason we have to produce to make
But still
sure.
some more work to be done there.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
What would surprise people the most about your Sex and the City experience, whether it was you personally or just the show itself? Like, what are some things that it wouldn't necessarily be talked about right off the bat?
That's a toughie.
Or even just like the craziest part of that whole time for you, like how do you deal with going on private jets around the world and being in the spotlight, you know, from going from nothing to that? Like how does that even happen for you?
Well, for me, it made me uncomfortable. But I think for everyone, it's different. And there are people that I look at and I'm like, wow, I'm so jealous of them because they seem to love it. Like for instance, Rob.
Sure.
Rob really loves it.
He just leans into the whole celebrity
He
thing.
does.
Yeah.
But he's been famous since he was like 9. So it's a different,
his whole
he's
life.
had so many versions of it and he's so many highs and lows and you know he has very interesting advice about the whole thing, which I really appreciated hearing. For me, I have like kind of a love-hate thing with it where obviously there are great things about it and I would say the best thing is access. You know, getting to be able to travel the world, having people feel like they know you in other countries. You know, it's a bizarre thing. You never really get used to it, but at the same time, I'm so thankful for it. My work with the refugees has been, you know, an outpouring of that. My work with the elephants has been an outpouring of that. I'm very thankful for that. The hard part, I think, is just that I'm kind of shy, which you're not really supposed to be if you're an actor, so they don't expect you to be,
But there are a lot of introverts who are actors.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I know. But they don't really think that. Fans don't think that when they're
somebody meets you for the first
approaching
time,
you.
they think you're going to be that person who they've seen on TV or in a movie.
Right.
And you're
if
not.
No. And obviously, in the beginning, like, I'd say in the height of the show, when I'd be wearing, like, my sweats, and they'd take pictures of me, and they'd be like, what would Charlotte think? Well, I'm doing that on purpose. I mean, not that I don't want to wear that. I totally want to wear my sweats.
But you can just wear whatever the heck you want.
Right, because I'm trying to move through life.
It's also a statement to be like, I'm just going to be me. You know?
Right, but
I'm
also
sure
it was that I just wanted to move through life. If I wore something nice, it was going to slow me down.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be
just
like,
wanna be
there's
comfortable.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
But like, I want to go. Like, I'm trying to go and get things done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just Kristin as opposed to Charlotte.
Yes.
Different people. And
Totally.
I'm sure it took a while to deal with the pressure of that, and I just also realized, like, I am my own separate person outside of all this, and I just need to keep that going.
I'm really grounded, and I knew that I was my own separate person because Charlotte is a character, and I am very much like her, but there are very huge differences in our lives, very huge, which were true the whole time. And that was another thing about us being together, is that we grounded each other. We knew each other, obviously, so I was surrounded by people who knew the differences, and I didn't have to continually remind myself of the differences, you know?